Hello, and welcome to the Life Skills Support Training on the newly developed Special Education Instructional Frameworks. Our objectives are to cover the basic components of this newly developed Special Education Framework. We are also going to review with you just the basic definition of life skills support. We're going to briefly review with you some of the best practices in working remotely with students with disabilities. And finally, we'll introduce you to a new set of materials that life skills support teachers will be using this school year, 2020-2021, the Unique Learning System. So what is this Special Education Instructional Framework? It's a newly created structure and foundation for understanding and implementing programming for students with disabilities here in the School District of Philadelphia. It is one way of bringing a measure of uniformity to the complex structure of special education. The purpose of creating this framework was to enhance the delivery of service to our students and to communicate the technical, logistical, and instructional expectations for special education programming. These frameworks you'll find incorporate a nationwide multi-year synthesis of research in the area of best practices in the field of special education. Over the course of several years, an inter-university writing team assembled by the Council for Exceptional Children and the CEDAR Center culled the national research data and developed a list of what they defined as the highest leverage practices in special education. In more colloquial terms, they looked at what practices can educators implement that will give them the most, quote, bang for their buck when working with students with disabilities. Inside the district, inter-office teams came together to review these highest leverage practices. These teams consisted of school-based special and general educators across different grade bands, staffs from the Office of Specialized Services, curriculum instruction and assessment, early childhood, multilingual, teaching and learning, and the Office of High Schools. The district teams spent last year collaborating, developing, and soliciting feedback on incorporating these high leverage practices into a usable framework that would have meaning within the district. This is an ongoing process that we need you to participate in, and we have information on how you can access the full frameworks document. So let's just briefly cover the practice domains for these high leverage practices. Across the high leverage practices, they separated them into practices involving collaboration, practices involving assessment, practices involving both social, emotional, and behavioral issues, practices involving instruction, as well as practices that give you your highest leverage when you're dealing with compliance issues. Now we have a link. This shows you the high leverage practices manual that's divided into those sections that we just went through. And we have a link in the asynchronous document that will link you directly to this manual. It's about 130 some pages. And we definitely want you to be looking through this and bringing questions that you might have about this document to us.
This document, it's a required reading, I think, for all of our special education teachers, any new teachers, even teachers, veteran teachers. It is our special education Bible. It is an opportunity for you to really take a look at the research, and many of the things that we do currently are in this high leverage practices, but it is really, really important, I believe, to make sure that you know those practices and understand what you're doing and how what you're doing is based on research.
Now, we're actually going to link you to the actual framework itself. Let's just briefly review what is in the framework. The framework is organized by support type. And as I mentioned, we're focusing right now on life skills support. So in the frameworks, you'll find under each support type, you'll see the high leverage practices that relate to those support types. You'll see a transition section fairly early on in the support type section, because we've come to understand that all decisions regarding programming for students with disabilities should be guided by a focus on transition. So each of these sections will start with the support type, the definition of the support type, and then transition as it relates to that support type. Each support type section will also provide guidance for teachers, guidance on the role of the special education assistant, if applicable, and also guidance for school leaders and administrators. Each support type section will also include considerations for digital learning to support teachers during this remote hybrid instruction period. And as I said, we're just briefly reviewing the definition of life skills support. And as you can see, it has not changed since 2008. And it just briefly states that life skills support are services for students with a disability who require services primarily in the areas of academic, functional, or vocational skills necessary for independent living. So with such a brief definition, this is one of. So as I mentioned earlier, here we are at the definition of life skills support, and you'll see that it has not changed in the state of Pennsylvania since 2008, and it's a very brief description. Life skills support, services for students with a disability who require services primarily in the areas of academic, functional, or vocational skills necessary for independent living. And you can see why with such a brief definition of life skills support, we really needed to create a framework that would give us a more in-depth understanding of what life skills support looks like within the school district of Philadelphia. So again, here is a link to the special education instructional framework. You'll find it in the document called the LSS asynchronous session links. And you'll be able to look to the framework and look it over at your leisure. Again, this is another lengthy document. And my colleague, Renee Boyce, wanted to say a few words about the importance of this document.
Well, the document, as you've heard, has really been our work for the past maybe 6 months or so, meeting with all the different offices and really working very diligently to combine the offices under Dr. Malika Brooke, making sure that there's a seamless connection across all offices. And so what we really are pressing is for our students to become an integral part of general education. And I believe that through this framework and through the opportunity for us to have input from all offices, we definitely will achieve that goal. And so this is really a groundbreaking year for us. And we believe that we still, this framework is still a work in progress. So now we need the input from you, our teachers. We need the input of where you believe we need to put more information, and we're really readily available to hear how you feel about it, and basically anything that you think that we need to add to it to make it better. This is a work in progress, and we look forward to working with you this year.
And now Renee's going to talk to us about some of the high leverage practices that relate specifically to students who are receiving life skills support.
All right, so this should not be a surprise to anyone for teachers who have been actually writing very effective IEPs. HLP 11, identifying and prioritizing long and short-term learning goals. This is really an opportunity for us to show all of our knowledge of the general ed curriculum and helping us to really find where these kids fit based on their grade level, based on where they are in their assessment, based on their learning progressions. All of that information about those students now sit in which grade level, and the access to the general curriculum is part of the rights for the students with life skills. Those students want to be included. Those students want to be just like the rest of the students. And so having a shared opportunity to know all of the standards and know exactly what the general education students are learning at their grade level is an opportunity for them to feel like they're fitting in and feel like they're belong. So you yourself as a teacher, you've been writing hopefully effective IEPs, and you will have short-term goals, you'll have long-term goals. But the key for us in this picture is to understand really the essential curriculum components and identify some of the prerequisites, the things that students will need in order to achieve the goals that they have in general education. So we're looking for the big ideas. Sometimes students with life skills will not be able to learn every last single detail, but they can grasp what's happening in history, what's happening in science. They can understand all of those knowledge base that the general ed students can learn. They may not understand every last single detail, but we have to give them access. As you see in the definition, academic is one of their goals, and it's what they're defined as. So as far as they can go, we want them to understand what they are. The next high leverage practice, number 16, is the use of explicit instruction. And so I'm sure you pretty much understand that explicit instruction definitely is a age-old term, but it is really a critical term. It's age-old because it is something that we need to continually do. When you think about explicit, think about observable, something that the students will be able to definitely see, hear, and understand. So we want to be able to show and tell our students what to do, how to solve it, talk them through it metacognitively, talk a little bit about what's going on, what are you thinking about. Explicit instruction, you probably remember, it's the I do. It's the teacher selecting the important and objective for the student. It's and what the learning outcomes are going to be for that student, designing instructional experiences for that student. So it's I do. And then the we do is the teacher giving that guided practice until the you do, which is the very last, is that independent practice. Now, our job is to make sure that they achieve mastery. And so we as students, are teachers of students with disabilities, our goal is for those students to master the concept. So we're not worried about the pacing of where the kids are and how long it takes them. The critical piece for them is to be able to master it. And so we do the I do, the we do, the you do, the students until those students can master those goals. It's a lot of modeling. It's a lot of scaffolding. It's a lot of practice. A lot of practice. Did I say it? A lot of practice. So that is the piece for us to understand what explicit instruction is. These high-level practices, these are things that you've already been doing, but the research is saying that those are things that need to be done. Now, we have a video in our asynchronous session link that will give you a little bit of just a brief video to show you what it looks like. I'm sure you also use explicit instruction for your teaching concepts and activities, but you can view that, and it is in the LSS asynchronous session link. So, Teresa, do you want to add anything about that, or?
No, no.
All right, next we actually have another video for you to view on YouTube, and that video is called Designing for Online and Distant Learning Accommodations. We would like for you to go again to the LSS asynchronous session link, and we would like for you to actually review the video. We would love for you to take some additional notes as needed on these following 5 points that are coming up, because there is a check for understanding that you need to complete to receive your Act 48 credits.
Now, as you go through this YouTube video, please pay particular attention to these 5 critical points. So you're going to be looking for, what is the video telling me about tracking behavior? What is being suggested around visual support for students, such as daily schedules, timers, behavior charts, consequences with rewards for staying and completing work? What is the overall message about behavior and supporting behavior? We also want you to look at sensory prep. What is the video telling me that I can do in terms of getting students ready for learning by implementing physical activities prior to learning?
Maybe walking. There might require those students that need to get up and have some movement, between doing activities, just getting them ready, stretching. And some of you have actually been doing that in your special ed classroom. So we've seen it, but this is really a sensory prep definitely for this distant learning. They need to have a chance to stop and, stretch and sort of, refocus.
So be sure to take notes on this again, because as Renee said, there are going to be some checks for understanding at the end of the presentation.
Okay.
So again, look for structure. What can you do towards establishing a routine for students that they can count on, that they'll be sure we're following this routine every day? Look for an understanding about visuals, what kind of visual cues you can create for students, so that they'll be informed about the beginning, middle, and end of activities and transitions. And finally, pay close attention to what the video is instructing around universal design for learning. As many of you know, UDL is a shift in thinking about removing barriers to learning. And be sure to use the UDL chart on the next slide as a reference that you can keep with you.
Yes, and so there's our UDL chart, and basically UDL, it really is a way of thinking and helping you to see that we just need to remove all barriers, and each child is presented with different barriers. But the big idea is basically in UDL, and engagement is really the why of learning, and the representation, or the multiple means of representation, that's the what of the learning. And then the action and expression, that is the how of the learning. So there you can go to many websites to be able to get further information on this, but we are the experts in this area. We're helping other people, and in all settings, to understand the UDL principles.
So we said that we would also introduce you to the new materials that are being provided for life skills support teachers during school year 2020-2021. And that is the unique learning system. These digital materials are being made available to the district through the Pennsylvania Department of Education. And they'll be training and working with the unique learning system digital materials shortly. Now, the state chose the unique learning system, and it's no surprise that they did, because their digital materials are really compatible with everything that we've been talking about. So the unique learning system digital materials are compatible with what you'll be seeing in the School District of Philadelphia Special Education Instructional Frameworks. And they're also compatible with the tenets of the high leverage practices in special education. So for example, unique learning systems focuses in on differentiation, consistent assessment across comprehensive grade bands, and so on. So the next couple of slides are just a brief introduction to their system in terms of what they have. Basically, it's a comprehensive instruction and mastery curriculum for all grade levels. And you'll see that they're attached to the Pennsylvania standards. So there's integrated assessment daily, and there's frequent progress monitoring as well. So this is just a brief snapshot. It's standards based. So regardless of what state you're in, they're attaching it to your state standards. There are differentiated materials, and there are many, many visual materials. Many of our learning support students or students who are receiving learning support services or life skills services need that kind of visual accompaniment. It covers all grade bands from preschool up to Transition Plus. There are interactive lesson plans, so it's really designed for remote learning as well. It's interactive. There are administrative tools, so there's a teacher's dashboard, and you'll take a peek at that shortly. It has a complete math curriculum, complete reading program, and there's also science and social studies as well. And again, as I mentioned, it's data-driven. There are frequent assessments and continual progress monitoring.
They have a teacher dashboard, and the teacher dashboard really actually orders the activities that you will have in your daily schedule. They're actually going to launch your lessons, and you'll launch your lessons directly from your dashboard. You're going to create your individualized plans for students who may not necessarily follow the main schedule. So the dashboard, as you can see, is very high tech, but very, very comprehensive, and every child will have their own schedule, and you'll be able to provide that for students. We mentioned standards base. These standards are what guides what students need to know and be able to do. And so even students with life skills, we must know what grade they're on to know what standards they should be working in. So this is a very rich standards-based program, and we're really excited that the standards will be used to guide them through all their daily lessons. And of course, results-driven and data-driven. Everything has to be based on data, and all of the data definitely have to be captured so that we can do what? Write our monitoring goals and keep our progress monitoring going. This is a point of contention for us in legal and litigation situations. So we are welcoming a system that has rich data and using data to drive instruction. Is news to you, which is, in our opinion, very, very good for the students with life skills, because it actually brings the world to the students, and it brings the world like news. And it provides informational text, which we believe are the things that those students definitely need to have access to on an ongoing basis. But as you see, it's also a school to home connection. So it's something that we can have parents participate in and involve students with current events and really written at their grade level. So we really do believe that this is going to be an additional solution inside of the unique materials.
So the unique learning system will be bringing all of the materials that we need for remote learning to us. It will be our job to keep the students and the parents involved and actively engaged in the materials, but we will have everything that we need to implement remote learning in the fall.
And you will actually be receiving information shortly as teachers about when we'll be setting up the training for unique. We're ending on just additional accessible educational materials from CAST. And we have these inside of our LSS asynchronization chart at the end for you to be able to really just use at your convenience, whatever you need. Will also be available to you in our office hours. So we really look forward to the opportunity to have you join us. This is just a brief overview. We hope that you found this to be valuable, and we look forward to working with you in the future.
And we'll see you next in the Unique Learning Systems training. Thank you.
Thank you.